Why is it that most people, no matter how hard they work, never escape being broke? That's the brutal question that has followed me for years as I've traveled the world, speaking to thousands of people who wanted a better life, yet found themselves trapped in the same cycle of paycheck to paycheck, month after month, year after year. I've met men and women who work 12-hour days, who sweat and grind and struggle, yet can't seem to break free. And I've learned that the answer isn't hidden in some mystery of economics or chance. It isn't locked up in government policy or the luck of the draw. No, my friends, it is something far simpler and far more uncomfortable. It is drift, the quiet, undisciplined drift of daily living that carries us away from fortune and straight into the harbor of mediocrity and regret. It's like rowing all day in a leaking boat. You pull and strain, your muscles ache, the blisters on your hands sting with every stroke, but you never make it to shore. You're busy, you're exhausted, you're sincere in your efforts, and still you're sinking. That's what it feels like to stay broke forever. You do what you think is enough, but the unseen holes of neglect and poor philosophy drain everything you earn faster than you can pour it in. And the worst part? Most people don't even know the boat is leaking. They think this is just life. They believe being broke is a condition they were born into or a fate they cannot change. But that's not true. The truth is, drifting without discipline ensures you stay broke no matter how much you earn. Now, some people will hear this and immediately raise their defenses. They'll say, Jim, you don't understand. Times are hard. Jobs are scarce. Wages are low. I do understand. I started broke. I started behind. But I also learned a long time ago that the marketplace rewards value, not time, not effort, not even sincerity. It rewards the disciplines that create value. And those disciplines are not secrets, not reserved for the fortunate few. They're available to everyone. The problem is, drifting feels easier than steering. Neglect feels safer than responsibility. And that is why, despite good intentions, most people stay broke their entire lives. When I was a young man, I thought like most people do. I worked hard on my job thinking that was the answer. But my mentor told me something that woke me up. He said, Jim, if you keep doing what you're doing, you'll keep getting what you've got. If you don't change, 5 years from now, you'll wind up broke again, only 5 years older. That stung. It forced me to face the truth. I wasn't broke because of bad luck or lack of opportunity. I was broke because I drifted from discipline. I spent without thinking. I learned nothing new. I wasted time believing tomorrow would somehow be different. And so tomorrow was always just like today. Empty, desperate, broke. Most people don't need another paycheck to fix their life. They need a new philosophy. They need to understand that it's not the system holding them down. It's the silent trade they make every day, trading growth for comfort, trading discipline for ease, trading their future for a fleeting moment of relief. That's the brutal truth. And until it's faced, nothing changes. So today, I want to walk you through this drift. I want to show you exactly why most people stay broke, not as a mystery, but as a predictable outcome of neglected disciplines. And more importantly, I want to show you how to break it, how to patch the leaking boat, and finally row toward a shore of freedom and fortune. Let me show you exactly why people stay broke and why it's not a mystery at all. Most people think staying broke happens because of one big mistake or one unlucky break, but that's not the way it works. Being broke is not an event. It's a philosophy expressed in tiny habits, tiny choices made day after day, quietly eroding your chance at wealth. Every dollar you waste is like planting weeds in your garden. They sprout without effort, choke out the harvest you could have had, and leave you wondering why nothing good ever grows. The drift begins the moment we start making silent trade-offs, the little exchanges we don't even notice anymore. I've watched people trade education for entertainment. They spend hours every night watching shows or scrolling through gossip while the wealth of knowledge sits untouched on their shelves or just a library card away. They trade seeds for sweets, meaning they consume every penny on pleasure instead of planting it to grow. They trade long-term security for short-term comfort, swiping the card for things they don't need to impress people who don't care. They trade self-respect for excuses, telling themselves and others that it's taxes or bosses or bad timing, anything to avoid admitting that their own neglect has kept them small. Let me tell you a story. I knew a neighbor who worked 40 years straight at the same job. He never missed a day, never slacked off, was the kind of man you could count on. Yet when retirement came, he had nothing. Not because the world failed him, but because he failed to learn. He failed to grow his value. He made the trade every year, choosing the easy path, ignoring the disciplines of saving, investing, improving himself. 40 years of quiet drift left him right where he started, broke, only older and out of time. I remember thinking, If this can happen to him, it can happen to anyone who doesn't wake up. That realization lit a fire in me to never let silent trade-offs steal my future. You see, every day you're making these trades, whether you know it or not. You're trading potential for comfort, opportunity for distraction, growth for laziness, and life pays you according to those trades. The marketplace doesn't lie. It hands you the exact harvest of the seeds you've planted. If you've planted weeds, waste, neglect, excuses, you reap poverty, frustration, regret. If you've planted discipline, learning, saving, stretching, you reap wealth, freedom, confidence. That's not luck. That's the law of the harvest. But here's the real tragedy. Staying broke doesn't just rob you of money. It robs your future self. It robs your children. It robs every dream you once had when you were young and thought life would be different. Drift steals silently until one day you wake up and realize not only are you broke, but you've lost years you can never buy back. And that pain, the pain of wasted time, is far greater than the pain of being poor. And so, my friends, the question isn't just whether you're broke today. The question is what these silent trade-offs are doing to the person you could have become. Because the truth is, being broke isn't just a financial state. It's an identity formed one neglected discipline at a time. And unless that changes, the cycle continues forever. Now, let me take you deeper into this reality, because until you see it in full, until it stings you in the core of your thinking, nothing will change. I want you to imagine this. A small termite, invisible to the naked eye, gnawing silently in the beams of your home. One termite won't collapse the house. One nibble is nothing, so you ignore it. You sleep peacefully at night, unaware of what's happening beneath the surface. But over the weeks, over the months, over the years, those tiny unseen bites add up. They multiply. They weaken the very structure holding your home together. And one day, without warning, the floor caves in beneath you. You're left standing in ruins, wondering how it happened, swearing that you never saw it coming. That, my friends, is exactly how drift compounds in your life and ensures you stay broke forever. Every little neglected discipline, every tiny rationalization, every day you say, it's fine, I'll do it tomorrow, they all feel harmless in the moment. You skip the book tonight, you buy the thing you can't afford, you waste the morning in bed. And because nothing catastrophic happens instantly, you think you've escaped the consequence. But let me give you a formula that changed my life. Failure is nothing more than a few errors in judgment, repeated every day. That's it. And success is just the opposite, a few simple disciplines practiced every day. Both of these forces, failure and success, don't announce themselves immediately. They creep, they compound silently until one day you either look back with pride at how far you've come or with crushing regret at how much you've lost. I used to believe drifting was harmless. I thought, skipping one seminar, spending a little extra, putting off saving, it's no big deal. But what I didn't understand is that every small neglect builds a habit. And habits are like rivers. A river doesn't carve a canyon overnight, but give it time and it will shape mountains. In the same way, neglect carves away at your future wealth, your confidence, your potential. Day by day, it builds a groove in your character, and once that groove is deep enough, escaping it feels impossible. You wake up years later chained to debt, chained to a job you hate, chained to an identity that says, this is just who I am. But it isn't who you are. It's who you became through compounded drift. And here's the harsh truth. Neglect doesn't pause when you do. It runs like a debt clock, ticking, counting, even when you're asleep. Time never stops adding interest to the price you'll have to pay. You can ignore a financial debt for a while, but the longer you wait, the heavier it becomes, the harder it is to climb out. It's the same with the debt of undisciplined living. The longer you postpone personal development, saving, wise investments, the more effort it will take later to fix what drift has eroded. Some people think they can put their life on pause and start fresh at 50. My friends, you can't pause life. The neglected years compound into a wall you'll have to scale just to reach level ground. Let me give you an example. I met a man who had worked for decades, never missing a shift. Yet when layoffs came, he had nothing saved, no skills to pivot, no network to lean on. He said to me, Jim, I thought time was on my side. But time is never on your side if you're drifting. It's either your greatest asset when used with discipline or your greatest enemy when wasted. That man wasn't lazy. He simply repeated small errors in judgment daily. He thought a stable paycheck was enough. He thought working hard was all it took. But because he didn't develop himself, because he neglected the little disciplines, the compounding force of drift left him broke and broken. And that story repeats itself millions of times across the world. Now I want you to picture this vividly. Imagine two people standing at the same starting line today. One decides to read a few pages of a good book, saves 10% of his income, invests time every week improving his skills. The other spends every extra dollar, never learns, wastes free hours on distractions. After one day, no difference. After 1 week, barely noticeable. But after a year, after 5 years, one of them has climbed out of debt, built a small fortune, grown confident and capable. The other is deeper in debt, less skilled, more desperate. The difference didn't happen overnight. It was built brick by brick, day by day, by either compounded discipline or compounded neglect. And that is the brutal truth about why most stay broke forever. They underestimate the force of compounded drift and overestimate the impact of occasional effort. My mentor once told me, "Jim, the road to failure is subtle. It's not marked with danger signs. It feels safe because you can't see the damage yet. But the longer you travel it, the faster you lose control." I never forgot that. It reminded me that if I wanted to change my life, I couldn't just stop big mistakes. I had to uproot the tiny errors, the silent termites, the invisible leaks. I had to reset my sail daily because the wind of neglect was always pushing me off course. And here's what I discovered. Once you accept that truth, you can stop drifting. You can start building momentum in the other direction. You can let small disciplines compound instead of small failures. But you can't do that until you see the contrast, until you clearly understand what separates those who stay broke from those who escape it and build wealth. Because wealth isn't a lucky break. It's the compounded reward of daily disciplines. And if you want to change course, you must first face this brutal truth, then make a deliberate, consistent turn. That's what we're about to uncover next, as we look at the clear and undeniable contrast between daily discipline and daily drift, and how that single difference sets two people on paths that lead to entirely different worlds. Now let's stand on the edge of these two worlds and look at them side by side. Imagine two men waking up tomorrow morning. The first one rolls out of bed and starts his day with intention. He reads a few pages from a book that challenges him, writes down his thoughts in a journal, plans his day with care. At lunch, he eats wisely, knowing health is wealth. He spends part of his evening learning a new skill, calling a mentor, thinking about how to bring more value to the marketplace. When he earns $1, he saves a dime, invests a portion, and spends the rest with thoughtfulness. Nothing he does feels extraordinary in the moment, but each small act is a seed planted for his future harvest. The second man wakes up just the same, but he lingers in bed, hits the snooze button a few times. He skips breakfast or grabs something quick and unhealthy. At work, he does only what's necessary to get by. After work, he collapses in front of the TV, scrolling on his phone, distracting himself from the quiet voice that says life could be more. When he earns $1, he spends it all, and often more than he has. Credit card bills pile up, but he tells himself he'll handle it later. Like the first man, nothing he does feels catastrophic in the moment. But unlike the first, these small acts are weeds planted for a future harvest of regret. Now fast forward 10 years. The first man has risen in his career, not because he was lucky, but because he became more valuable. He's financially stable, has investments growing quietly, has learned skills that command respect. He's built confidence because he kept promises to himself, and his health allows him to enjoy life fully. The second man, meanwhile, is still broke. The weight of debt is heavier. Opportunities passed him by because he never developed himself to seize them. He feels stuck, older now, wondering why nothing ever changed. These two men started the same, yet they live on different planets. And it all began with what they did daily. One man ate an apple, the other ate candy. One fed his mind, the other numbed it. One saved and invested, the other consumed and wasted. And over a decade, those choices compounded into wealth for one and poverty for the other. This is why I say success is not something you pursue. It's attracted by the person you become, and you become that person by practicing disciplines daily. Discipline builds bridges to fortune. Drift builds walls around poverty. You can't cheat it, you can't fake it, and you can't escape it. Life gives you exactly what you've been building, brick by brick, over time. When I finally understood this, it was like a light switched on in my mind. I realized I didn't need to wait for a miracle. I didn't need someone to rescue me. I needed to change the daily pattern of my life. I needed to start planting different seeds. So I began with small things, reading a few pages each day, saving a few dollars, writing down my thoughts. At first, it felt insignificant, but months later, I was different. A year later, I was climbing. And within a few short years, my entire life transformed. Not because the world got easier or luck came my way, but because I stopped drifting and started practicing daily disciplines that made me worthy of success. You see, most people never make this turn. They stay trapped in drift because they cling to illusions that keep them comfortable while stealing their future. Illusions like, someday it will all change, the world is against me, or a little neglect doesn't matter. These illusions feel safe. They protect our pride. They justify our lack of progress. But they're deadly. They're the soft whispers that lull us to sleep while drift carries us further from fortune. If you want to stop staying broke, you must first destroy these illusions. You must confront them, rip them out, and replace them with the truth. And that's exactly what we'll do next, as we reveal the 3 deadly illusions that keep most people broke for life. One of the most dangerous illusions I've ever seen, one that has ruined more dreams and stolen more wealth than almost anything else, is the belief that your life will change only when the world changes. This illusion whispers to people every day. It's not you, it's them. The system is broken. The government is unfair. The economy is against you. Until these things change, you're stuck. There's nothing you can do. And many believe it. They build their entire mindset on the hope that someone else will fix the circumstances of life, that someday the winds will blow just right and finally carry them into the land of fortune. My friends, that is not only an illusion, it is a slow, silent death sentence for your potential. I've met people in different countries, from different backgrounds, speaking different languages, yet they all shared this same dangerous mindset. They waited. They waited for better politicians, better bosses, better luck, a better economy, as if life owed them improvement without them having to change a single thing about themselves. They stood on the dock of life, staring at the horizon, waiting for the perfect wind to sail their ship. And while they waited, their ship rotted. The sails tore in the storms of neglect. The hull grew weak. The ropes frayed. And by the time the perfect wind finally came, there was no ship left to sail. And yet they cursed the wind, blamed the sea, and convinced themselves it was destiny, not drift. You can't change the seasons. That was one of the first truths I learned from my mentor. Winter comes for all of us, and no amount of wishing or blaming will stop it. Governments shift, markets rise and fall, opportunities appear and vanish, but those are just seasons blowing through life. You can't stand in the field of life and command spring to come sooner. You can't shout at the clouds to bring rain for your crops. And you certainly can't sit idle, hoping that someday, when the season is right, fortune will simply land in your lap. If you wait for the world to change before you change, you will be waiting for the rest of your life, and you will stay broke while you wait. True wealth, true change doesn't start with the economy or with politics or with luck. It starts inside of you. That's the brutal truth many avoid because it puts responsibility where it belongs, on their own shoulders. It's easier to point fingers than to look in the mirror. It's easier to complain than to discipline yourself, and that's why most people never take this first step toward change. They would rather wait for external forces to shift than accept that their own thinking and habits must shift first. But here's what I learned. When you take full responsibility for your life, you don't need the world to change to succeed. You create your own seasons. You build your own opportunities. You sail your own ship, regardless of the wind. And the moment you realize this, you stop being broke in your mind even before you're rich in your wallet. But as dangerous as this illusion is, it has a close cousin that is equally deadly. It's not just waiting for the world to change. It's waiting for someday, believing that you can drift today, and somehow, without changing your habits or philosophy, the future will magically reward you. That's the next illusion we must destroy, because until we do, no amount of knowledge or opportunity will matter. There's a quiet lie that has robbed millions of people of their dreams, and it goes like this: I'll do it someday. It sounds harmless, almost responsible. You tell yourself you're busy now, overwhelmed, not ready, not strong enough, not smart enough, but soon, someday, you'll get it together. Someday you'll start reading the books. Someday you'll save money. Someday you'll launch the business, get in shape, invest in yourself, repair your relationships. Someday you'll finally become the person you know you could be. And because it's someday and not never, you feel safe. You comfort yourself with the illusion that change is coming, that time is on your side, that there's no real urgency today. My friends, that is a lie. The road of someday leads straight to never. I've spoken to audiences around the world, and everywhere I go, I meet people who are experts in the art of postponing. They talk about the goals they've had for 10 years, as if time owes them an easy tomorrow. They believe there's a magical point in the future where everything will align. They'll have more money, more energy, fewer problems, fewer responsibilities, and then they'll take action. But let me tell you the brutal truth. There is no such day. Someday is not on the calendar. It never arrives. You wake up tomorrow and it's called today. You wake up 10 years later and it's still called today. And if you don't act now, you'll still be broke, still frustrated, still stuck, only older and with fewer options. I know this illusion because I lived it. I told myself for years that I'd save money when I earned more, that I'd read books when I had more time, that I'd become disciplined when life got easier. I was waiting for someday, but one day I woke up and realized I had been saying that for years and nothing had changed. The problem wasn't the timing, it was me. I was using someday as an excuse to avoid the discomfort of discipline today. And as long as I held on to that excuse, I stayed broke, I stayed small, I stayed stuck. The moment I abandoned it, the moment I said, enough, I'm doing it now, no matter how small, no matter how hard, my life began to transform. Here's the law of life. Change delayed is change denied. Every day you postpone saving, you postpone growing. Every day you delay reading, learning, improving, you compound ignorance instead of wisdom. The habits you refuse to build today become chains you cannot break tomorrow. People think they can live casually for years and then suddenly flip a switch and live successfully. But success doesn't work like that. You don't casually wander into fortune. You prepare for it with daily, disciplined effort. Someday will not rescue you. Someday will betray you. Only today has the power to change your life. And if you miss it enough times, your future will be nothing but a museum of regrets. But there's still one more illusion that feeds the cycle of staying broke forever. Even when people stop waiting for the world to change, even when they admit someday may never come, they still cling to this final dangerous belief that small neglect doesn't matter. That's the illusion we must tear apart next, because it's often the final chain keeping people trapped in poverty of both wealth and character. One of the most dangerous illusions that keeps people broke forever is the quiet, almost comforting belief that there will always be more time. It's the whisper that says, not today, I'll do it someday. And at first, that sounds harmless. It even feels responsible. You tell yourself you're waiting for the right moment, the right opportunity, the perfect alignment of circumstances. You'll start reading someday. You'll start saving someday. You'll finally take that big step toward your dreams someday. It feels safe to say it because it's not a refusal. It's just a delay. But my friends, that delay is a trap. Someday is not a day on the calendar. It is a mirage that moves further away every time you chase it. I used to live in this illusion. I told myself I'd change when life slowed down, when I had a little more money, a little more energy, a little more certainty. I convinced myself that I was serious about my goals, just not right now. And because there was no pain in postponing, no immediate consequence, I kept doing it. But here's the brutal truth I had to face. Every time I said someday, I was really saying not ever. I was lying to myself to avoid the discomfort of starting small, of facing my own undisciplined habits in the present moment. And the years slipped away quietly, leaving me no closer to where I wanted to be. What most people don't realize is that delay has a cost. Time is not neutral, it compounds. When you waste a day, you don't just lose 24 hours, you lose the harvest that day could have planted. You lose the skills you could have sharpened, the savings you could have built, the opportunities you could have been ready for. And as those missed days pile up, they become a wall you must climb just to get back to even. People think they can ignore discipline for 10 years and then suddenly live a successful life. But success isn't something you switch on. It's built brick by brick, habit by habit, discipline by discipline. And if you don't start today, you'll never have the foundation to hold it tomorrow. I often tell people this: change delayed is change denied. Waiting for someday is the fastest way to let your dreams die quietly while you feel safe thinking they're still alive. And the greatest tragedy is that most don't realize what they've lost until it's too late. Until someday has run out and they're left with nothing but regret. If you want to break free from being broke, you must destroy this illusion completely. You must accept that there is no perfect time. There is only now, this moment, this decision to take a small step toward discipline and growth. The choice you make today will echo far louder in your future than the fantasy of someday ever will. Perhaps the most deceptive illusion of all, and the one that has ruined more lives quietly than any economic crash or business failure, is the belief that small neglect does not matter. People convince themselves that missing a day of discipline is harmless. They tell themselves that one more unnecessary purchase won't make a difference, that skipping the book tonight is no big deal, that tomorrow they'll get serious. They live as though success or failure is decided in giant dramatic moments instead of the daily, unseen choices that compound quietly over years. And because nothing catastrophic happens right away, they mistake that silence for safety. But my friends, the truth is far more brutal. Every act of neglect is a seed planted for a future harvest of regret. And every moment of discipline you skip becomes an invisible chain you'll have to drag through life. I want you to picture a farmer again, standing in a wide, fertile field. The soil is ready, the season is right, the tools are in his hands. Yet he looks at the ground and thinks, I'll skip today. One day doesn't matter. He skips planting. He skips watering. And because the earth doesn't scream back at him immediately, because there's no instant consequence, he feels justified. A week later, another excuse. A month later, another delay. Season after season, the field is neglected. And when autumn arrives and the neighboring fields are filled with golden crops ready to be harvested, he stands in silence on his barren land, realizing far too late that his neglect didn't just cost him a single day. It stole an entire season of reward. That's how most people lose their wealth, their health, their happiness, not through sudden catastrophe, but through quiet, compounding neglect that goes unchecked for years. In my own life, I learned this lesson the hard way. I once believed that I could eat poorly for just a few days and it wouldn't matter, that skipping one seminar wouldn't cost me much, that spending a little extra money here and there wouldn't affect my future. I thought wealth and success were built by avoiding big mistakes while allowing myself to relax on the little things. But the little things are never little. One day of skipping discipline turns into 2, then 10, then 100. Before you know it, you've built a habit, not of achievement, but of avoidance. And habits are powerful builders. They construct the walls of your life brick by brick, whether you're aware of it or not. Neglect builds a prison just as discipline builds a palace. The only difference is that one locks you in with regret while the other frees you with opportunity. This illusion thrives because of delayed consequences. If every skipped workout added 10 pounds immediately, nobody would skip. If every wasted dollar vanished from your future fortune in an instant, you'd think twice before spending recklessly. If every ignored opportunity shouted its loss the same day, you'd never ignore one. But that's not how life works. The danger of neglect is in its subtlety. It hides, it waits, it compounds silently like interest on a loan you didn't know you took out. One day, seemingly out of nowhere, you wake up buried in debt, stuck in a failing body, trapped in mediocrity, wondering how it all happened. But it didn't just happen. It was built slowly, invisibly, by daily neglect that you told yourself didn't matter. So how do you break free from this illusion? You must treat every small act as significant, because it is. Every dollar you save, every page you read, every thought you write down, every skill you practice. Each one compounds just as neglect does. The difference is, discipline compounds in your favor. It creates wealth, knowledge, confidence, freedom. Neglect compounds against you. It robs you quietly, builds weakness instead of strength, regret instead of reward. And the brutal truth is that life does not ignore small errors. It adds them up. It keeps a perfect score. And one day, the bill for neglect will come due, and you will pay it in full. I tell you this not to crush you, but to wake you up. Because if neglect can compound silently, so can discipline. If small errors can ruin your life over time, small acts of growth can transform it completely. You don't need to change everything overnight. You just need to reverse the direction of your daily habits. Start watering your field today. Plant just one seed. Make just one better choice. Do it again tomorrow. And watch as those small disciplines, compounded over months and years, break the chains of neglect and build a harvest of wealth, success, and freedom. But this shift can't happen without a deeper transformation in how you think and live. To stop being broke forever, you must make a radical shift from thinking like a consumer to thinking like an investor, not just with your money, but with your time, your energy, your very philosophy of life. And that's where we must go next. Most people stay broke not because they lack opportunity, but because they think like consumers instead of investors. This mindset is woven into almost everything they do. They spend their dollars as soon as they get them, chasing momentary pleasure rather than building lasting wealth. They consume entertainment instead of investing in education. They consume comfort instead of investing in health. They consume their time with distractions instead of investing it into developing skills that could change their future. And because this pattern feels normal, because almost everyone around them lives this way, they never see the trap they're in. They believe wealth is only for the lucky few, not realizing that fortune quietly follows those who think and act like investors long before they have riches in the bank. I remember standing in a store once, watching people line up to buy trinkets, gadgets, things they didn't need and couldn't afford. They smiled as they swiped their cards, feeling for a brief moment like they had gained something. But as I watched, I thought to myself, this is why most will stay broke forever. Because wealth is not what you buy, it's what you build. And you build it by planting your money, your time, your talents like seeds in the soil of growth. Consumers eat their seeds, investors plant them. Consumers ask, what can I get right now? Investors ask, what will this become in 5 years, 10 years? That single difference in thinking creates a gap between poverty and fortune that grows wider with every passing day. But this shift is not only about money, it's about philosophy. A consumer philosophy spends its energy on escape. It looks for comfort, distraction, entertainment. An investor philosophy spends its energy on creation. It looks for growth, learning, contribution. A consumer lets life happen to them. An investor shapes life through deliberate choices. A consumer waits for opportunity to arrive. An investor prepares for opportunity long before it shows up. And when it does, they're ready to seize it while others watch from the sidelines, wondering why luck never visits them. I had to learn this transformation myself. There was a time when every dollar I made was gone by the weekend. I spent my time avoiding responsibility instead of building capacity. I consumed every day, telling myself I deserved it, telling myself wealth would somehow find me later. But later never came. It wasn't until I flipped my mindset that everything changed. I started treating my money like a seed, saving and investing a little each day. I treated my time like a bank account, withdrawing from distractions and depositing into learning, reading, practicing skills. I treated my mind like fertile ground, planting ideas from books and mentors that could grow into new opportunities. Slowly but surely, I shifted from consumer to investor, and slowly but surely, my life began to multiply. This radical shift is what separates those who escape being broke from those who stay trapped forever. It's not magic. It's not luck. It's a choice to stop eating every seed life gives you and start planting them. To stop living only for today and start living for the future. To stop drifting and start steering. And it begins with small, practical disciplines that anyone can do, but few are willing to commit to. These disciplines are the bridge from consumer to investor, from broke to wealthy, from drifting to deliberate living. And if you'll practice them consistently, they will transform not only your bank account, but your character, your confidence, your entire destiny. Let's look at these 5 disciplines now, the simple yet powerful daily actions that break the cycle of poverty and build a foundation for lasting success. Most people stay broke not because they lack opportunity, but because they think like consumers instead of investors. This mindset is woven into almost everything they do. They spend their dollars as soon as they get them, chasing momentary pleasure rather than building lasting wealth. They consume entertainment instead of investing in education. They consume comfort instead of investing in health. They consume their time with distractions instead of investing it into developing skills that could change their future. And because this pattern feels normal, because almost everyone around them lives this way, they never see the trap they're in. They believe wealth is only for the lucky few, not realizing that fortune quietly follows those who think and act like investors long before they have riches in the bank. I remember standing in a store once, watching people line up to buy trinkets, gadgets, things they didn't need and couldn't afford. They smiled as they swiped their cards, feeling for a brief moment like they had gained something. But as I watched, I thought to myself, this is why most will stay broke forever. Because wealth is not what you buy, it's what you build. And you build it by planting your money, your time, your talents like seeds in the soil of growth. Consumers eat their seeds, investors plant them. Consumers ask, what can I get right now? Investors ask, what will this become in 5 years, 10 years? That single difference in thinking creates a gap between poverty and fortune that grows wider with every passing day. But this shift is not only about money, it's about philosophy. A consumer philosophy spends its energy on escape. It looks for comfort, distraction, entertainment. An investor philosophy spends its energy on creation. It looks for growth, learning, contribution. A consumer lets life happen to them. An investor shapes life through deliberate choices. A consumer waits for opportunity to arrive. An investor prepares for opportunity long before it shows up. And when it does, they're ready to seize it while others watch from the sidelines, wondering why luck never visits them. I had to learn this transformation myself. There was a time when every dollar I made was gone by the weekend. I spent my time avoiding responsibility instead of building capacity. I consumed every day, telling myself I deserved it, telling myself wealth would somehow find me later. But later never came. It wasn't until I flipped my mindset that everything changed. I started treating my money like a seed, saving and investing a little each day. I treated my time like a bank account, withdrawing from distractions and depositing into learning, reading, practicing skills. I treated my mind like fertile ground, planting ideas from books and mentors that could grow into new opportunities. Slowly but surely, I shifted from consumer to investor, and slowly but surely, my life began to multiply. This radical shift is what separates those who escape being broke from those who stay trapped forever. It's not magic. It's not luck. It's a choice to stop eating every seed life gives you and start planting them. To stop living only for today and start living for the future. To stop drifting and start steering. And it begins with small, practical disciplines that anyone can do, but few are willing to commit to. These disciplines are the bridge from consumer to investor, from broke to wealthy, from drifting to deliberate living. And if you'll practice them consistently, they will transform not only your bank account, but your character, your confidence, your entire destiny. Let's look at these 5 disciplines now. The simple yet powerful daily actions that break the cycle of poverty and build a foundation for lasting success. There comes a moment in every person's life when they look in the mirror and ask themselves a question they can no longer avoid. How did I get here? And is it too late to change? I know this moment well because I lived it. I was 25 years old, broke, behind on my promises to my family, watching life pass me by while I stood still. I thought maybe I had already missed my chance, that perhaps the good life was only for others who started earlier, who were luckier, who had something I didn't. But my mentor looked me square in the eye one day and said words that burned into my soul. You are not late, but you are responsible. And with those words, my excuses evaporated like smoke. I realized that as long as I was still breathing, as long as there was time left on the clock of my life, I could change. I could build wealth, develop character, earn respect, and live fully. But it wouldn't happen by waiting, wishing, or hoping. It would happen only when I took full, unshakable responsibility for everything in my life. Past, present, and future. You see, most people spend their lives running from responsibility. They hide behind blame, pointing at their parents, their boss, their country, their upbringing, the economy. They tell stories about how others had more advantages, more resources, more connections. And maybe some of that is true. Life is not fair. Seasons come and go, and some are harsher for some than others. But none of that changes this unbreakable truth. You cannot control the wind, but you can set the sail. You cannot rewrite your past, but you can chart your future. Responsibility is the lever that lifts you out of drift and places you firmly on the path of deliberate, disciplined living. It is the moment you stop saying, "Why me?" and start saying, "It's on me." It is the day you stop wishing the world were easier and decide to become better. And let me tell you something important. Becoming better doesn't require you to turn everything around overnight. That's another illusion that keeps people stuck. They think they must erase every mistake, rewrite every chapter of their life, build an empire in 12 months, or else they're doomed. But success doesn't work like that. Fortune doesn't demand perfection. It demands progress. And progress begins with a single decision, made fully and made now. One step of discipline breaks the chain of 100 steps of neglect. One act of responsibility begins to repay years of drift. Life is not asking you to do it all today. It is asking you to finally stop doing nothing and start doing something meaningful with conviction and consistency. When I began my journey, I started small. I read a few pages from a book each day. I saved a few dollars. I started keeping notes on my thoughts and lessons I learned. I showed up to every seminar I could afford. Those actions didn't feel dramatic at the time, but they compounded into something extraordinary. Within a few years, my entire life had transformed. And not because I found a shortcut or because luck suddenly favored me. It happened because I accepted responsibility and built momentum one disciplined day at a time. The man I became was unrecognizable from the boy I once was, and all because of a simple yet profound decision: to stop waiting for someone else to change my life and to finally take ownership of it myself. If you're listening to me right now and you feel like time has slipped through your fingers, if you've been drifting for years or even decades, I want you to know this: you are not late. The harvest season is not over for you. As long as you are alive, there is seed to plant, ground to till, and a future to build. But you must stop feeding the illusions that have kept you broke forever. You must stop blaming the world, stop postponing change to some imaginary someday, stop telling yourself that small neglects don't matter. They do matter. They always have. And the only way to change your destination is to change your direction. Today, right now, this very moment. Here is the beautiful part of life's design. Just as neglect compounds against you, discipline compounds for you. Every page you read adds a brick to your foundation of knowledge. Every dollar you save plants a seed for future harvests. Every skill you develop sharpens the tools that can carve out new opportunities. Every day you live with intention, you weaken the hold of drift and strengthen the muscles of character and wealth. In time, the person you are becoming will astonish you. Others will look at your transformation and call it luck, but you will know the truth. You will know it came from taking responsibility, from deciding that today, not tomorrow, not someday, was the day you began steering your ship toward fortune and freedom. So here's my challenge to you. Before this day ends, write down one new discipline you will begin immediately. Just one. Write it on paper, not in your mind. Commit to it with everything you've got. Maybe it's saving a portion of your income. Maybe it's reading every morning. Maybe it's finally finding a mentor or surrounding yourself with people who elevate you instead of pulling you down. Whatever it is, let it mark the moment you drew a line in the sand and said, "Enough drifting. I am taking control of my life." Then tomorrow, add another discipline and another. Let these small acts of responsibility multiply until 5 years from now, you no longer recognize the broke, confused, drifting person you once were. Instead, you'll stand as a builder, a steward of wealth and wisdom, someone who refused to stay broke forever and proved that transformation is possible for anyone willing to do the work. 5 years from now, you will tell a story about this season of your life. You will either tell a story of change, of courage, of rising above excuses and illusions, or you will tell a story of quiet regret, of time wasted, of a ship that never left the dock. The choice is yours. My hope, my deepest wish for you, is that you'll make the same choice I made, the same choice thousands of others have made, to take full responsibility for your life, to practice the simple disciplines every day, and to never again settle for the drifting, broke existence that so many accept as normal. You are not late, but you are responsible. And that responsibility embraced today is the first step toward building a life of fortune, freedom, and fulfillment that you and your loved ones will cherish for the rest of your days.